This man's name is Rusty. He is a former American soldier, teacher, and former American football coach at the school club he taught at. That afternoon, Rusty and his family will move to an orphanage in Texas to work as a teacher, teaching orphans. When they arrived at the orphanage, Rusty's family was greeted by a teacher named Frank. In the middle of their chat, suddenly the police came with a teenager covered in blood named Hardy. The policeman explained that 2 days ago, Hardy's father was murdered and his mother just left, leaving Hardy alone with his father's corpse. Frank asks the police to take Hardy to the school's health clinic, while Frank would escort Rusty and his family to their new home. However, when they saw the poor condition of the house, Rusty's wife, Juanita, was disappointed. If it weren't for her husband's wish, she wouldn't have moved. That night, Juanita had trouble sleeping. Rusty tries to calm her down and promises to clean the house tomorrow. When Juanita sleeps, Rusty remembers the past. The time when he and his brother had to live and grow up in an orphanage. At that time, the children in the orphanage were never noticed by the government, even only considered a burden on society. Now, as an adult, he is determined to serve in order to provide a proper education for the children of the orphanage. The morning after cleaning the house, Rusty met a health worker named Doc Hall. While chatting, they heard the sound of pandy children fighting. Shortly after, Frank came. Doc, worried about the children being punished, tries to protect them. He explained to Frank that they were just discussing American football. Tomorrow, Rusty really wanted to form a football team at the orphanage school. Although pessimistic, the head of the orphanage finally gave permission. In the afternoon, on the first day of teaching, Rusty was confused. Why almost all the students in the class no one can count or read at all. But as a teacher, he still teaches them with great patience. After the lesson, Rusty immediately sent the children to the field to assess their ability to play football.
Ready! Hey! You can't wrap up and put your opponent in a headlock.
What the hell, Hardy?
All right, son?
I'm here. You just got your bell rung.
The next day, in the office of the head of the orphanage, Frank said what Rusty did was useless, because the orphans had no talent. It is better for them to learn how to print brochures so that when they grow up, they can work in factories. So, without the knowledge of the head of the orphanage, all this time in the middle of class, Frank had been secretly telling the children to print brochures to resell. He even did not hesitate to hit them with a stick if they made a mistake. Unfortunately, the head of the orphanage, who never knew about the exploitation of children, thought Frank was a good teacher. Instigated, the head of the orphanage then called Rusty and told him to stop coaching football. He felt he learned to know the world of work better than just the world of sports. After all, the requirements for passing the exam are also assessed from reading and writing skills, not sports. Especially now to read just one sentence, the orphans are still not fluent. But instead of being discouraged, Rusty was even more challenged. With the help of his wife, he was determined to teach them even more.
Those, these, there, that.
But our focus will be on learning through intense practice so that we can pass this test together. But you're not most boys, are you? You need to focus.
Is this test going to cover female parts? Sharpen my skills.
No, it's not, boys. It's from Dutch Meyer, Texas.
Teach you how to become ladies.
Thank you.
Exam day arrived. All students try to solve the exam questions given. That night, in the yard, Rusty looks worried if the kids don't pass. Unlike her husband, Juanita actually looks calm. Since helping teach here, he has begun to accept the situation. Even feel much happier than where he lived before. That afternoon, while practicing football, the head of the orphanage came and told him the results of yesterday's exams. Out of 17 children, only 5 failed, while the rest passed with mediocre grades. Heard the announcement just now, they were happy and then resumed their practice. But because of his enthusiasm, the ball was kicked too hard until it was damaged because it was hit by aloe vera. Practice had to be closed until the ball was fixed. A few days later, Rusty and Doc went to an inter-school football league meeting. There, Rusty registered his football team under the name Masonic Home. But the league president refused the application, because Rusty's school had only a few students. According to the regulations, each school is required to have a minimum of 500 students. Doc then replied, according to the rules, even though the number of students is less, but if the participants from other schools don't mind, then Masonic Home can still join. After a long discussion, the committee decided that the registration of the Masonic Home team in the inter-school futsal championship was accepted. After returning from there, when Rusty conveyed the decision of the meeting, all the children looked very happy. It was the first time in their lives that the orphans who were always considered a burden could have hoped for achievement. Weeks of practice until finally the day of the inter-school tournament arrived. But because it's the first time the Masonic team has competed and it's still not together, none of the kids can play properly. Even when Hardy managed to score the first point, the point was disallowed by the referee because his friend made a foul. The whole team fights and blames each other. Although embarrassed, Rusty and Doc still tried to calm them down. In that first match, Masonic Home lost 30-50. The next day, when he was dizzy thinking about a new formation, Rusty saw his daughter drawing something. When asked, her little daughter replied that she was drawing a football formation like her father often made. From these scribbles, Rusty immediately got an idea. That night, just as the kids were about to take a shower, Rusty suddenly ordered them all out. On the outside he shows a newfound strategy thanks to his daughter's image. Different from the old formation, this formation relies more on attacking speed to rotate to the outside of the field rather than a physical strength competition in the middle of the field. So no matter how big the opposing team's body size is, they will definitely have a hard time catching up with the Masonic team's speed. However, when Rusty asked what the children thought about this new formation, everyone remained pessimistic and unsure of how to win. The desperation of his football team made Rusty disappointed. He then told me that since childhood, he had lived in the same orphanage as them. Rusty felt lonely and ignored. He does not have parents who support him on the sidelines. Even so, he never gave up and continued to fight for his dreams to become who he is today. He hopes that all the orphans here can also have a strong mentality like him. Then in the middle of the cold night, Rusty told the children to shout that they were proud to be orphans.
All right, damn it, get in here.
When the others disbanded, Rusty rebuked why Hardy had not shouted along with the others. Hardy replied that he didn't want to shout silly things like that. After all, orphans still seemed to be lowly children. Day after day passed, until the day of the second match arrived. In this match, the Masonic home team started trying to use their new formation.
Side to Hardy Brown. Takes it up the sideline. We're almost down to play, folks.
That's a good start. He is. He's fast.
We're not looking good, Coach.
Dang it.
Zone untouched and smile.
Touchdown. He's a fat ass.
The 5 and touchdown orphan.
Unexpectedly, the Masonic team won, thanks to the new formation created by little Princess Rusty. On the way home, Rusty's car breaks down. Shortly after, another school bus stopped and mocked the Masonic children. Even their coach named Luther came down and mocked them by saying the orphans couldn't possibly beat his football team from a top school. Hearing Luther's words, Rusty could only be patient. The days passed. News of the victory and unique formation of the Masonic Home 12 orphan football team has spread across America. Thanks to the news, many people came just to watch Masonic play live. In the locker room, before starting the match, Rusty deliberately heated up his team. He said that earlier the opposing coach said Masonic Home would definitely lose. Rusty's provocation managed to burn their spirits.
As he turns upfield. He gets split up. Touchdown orphan.
You sandbagging me, Bobber?
Every case.
Throws, goes on a wild pitch, stops short of the first down mark.
Some mercy, Snugs!
Ladies and gentlemen, the game is over and
After yesterday's victory, victory after victory was always achieved. Stories of orphans who can win consecutively without losing and even then viral and inspire many people, especially fellow orphans in the Texas area. One day, at the orphanage, a woman came looking for her son who was a Masonic home player named CD. The woman cried asking her son to go home while saying that she regretted ever leaving a CD at this orphanage. But CD refuses. He knows his mother is coming because now he has become a famous football player. CD is so sad. For years he had hoped his mother would come back to pick him up with regrets. But apparently his mother has not changed.
Your mother!
Hey, now,
Get in the car.
Calm down.
The car!
That's it.
Girl!
Seeley.
Seeing his friend's sadness, Hardy hugged CD and said that he was not alone. Hardy and all the kids here understand how CD feels. They all know how painful it is to be dumped by their own biological mother. Team Masonic Home's victory still continues. No opposing team has yet been able to defeat Rusty's unique formation. The news of their victory has always been eagerly awaited by Americans. Slowly, Rusty's dream to raise the status of orphans in this orphanage began to come true. The next day, the head of the orphanage gave a donation of football uniforms from another school team, a fellow tournament participant. The head of the orphanage explained that because the finances weren't enough to buy a football uniform, he took the initiative to ask another school for clothes to replace the old Masonic football team. After the head of the orphanage left, Rusty saw Doc drinking alcohol. Rusty throws the drink away and tells Doc to be a good example to the students. If the kids kept seeing Doc addicted to alcohol, one day they'd be drunk too. Hearing Rusty's words, Doc was silent. On the other hand, Frank is seen meeting with Luther, the coach of the opposing team that Masonic will face in the semifinals. Secretly, Luther had paid Frank to find fault with the Masonic team to disqualify him from the tournament. Frank gives documents about Hardy's actual age. In the document, Hardy's age is written 1 year older. Meaning, the Masonic team has violated the rules of the league tournament. Next week, the day of the semifinal match arrived. This time Masonic Home is playing against Team Luther football, just like the previous game. Point by point Masonic managed to achieve it easily. Seeing his team almost lost, Luther used a cheat. He ordered his players to injure the Masonic players.
I didn't mean it.
When Doc Hall rushed to his side.
Carlos, get the stretcher on the double. All right, here we go, gentlemen.
But fortunately, despite the lack of one player, Masonic Home still won far above Luther's team. That night, at the orphanage, Frank suddenly burst into the boys' dorm room. He immediately dragged and beat one of the students with a wooden stick until he was battered while saying that this was punishment for peeping at the girls' dormitory. Satisfied, Frank left from there. Hardy, who did not accept his friend being tortured with anger, then beat Frank from behind using Frank's own wooden stick, until the stick broke. Just like Frank, satisfied, Hardy left from there. The next morning, Rusty was shocked when he read the newspaper news about the disqualification of the Masonic home team because it was considered cheating to include Hardy in the team who was 1 year older than other school children. When he wanted to tell Doc, he was confused as to why one of the students was battered. After hearing the story of Frank's beating last night, Rusty decided to report to the head of the orphanage. But apparently, before Rusty arrived, Frank had already made up a story about last night's incident. Then, he reported back to Hardy. But Rusty didn't care. He kept reporting all the violence Frank had committed from the student's story so far. Unfortunately, the head of the orphanage trusts Frank more simply because he's a senior teacher here. Hearing the decision of the head of the orphanage, Rusty was very disappointed. At home, he confided in Juanita. Rusty was really tired and couldn't take it anymore if he had to keep fighting alone. Seeing her husband's desperation, Juanita then gave a stack of letters of support sent by Masonic home fans who for 2 consecutive weeks always came from various regions throughout America. Juanita said that Rusty was not alone. Out there are so many people who support him even though they have never met. While reading a letter on the terrace of the house, all members of the Masonic home team came and said that since last night's incident, Hardy had disappeared and had not returned to the orphanage. When he heard the news, Rusty was sure that Hardy would return to his old house. The house where Hardy's biological mother had left him alone with his father's corpse. In a stable, Rusty found the boy. He then tells the story of his past. In the past, he had also felt scared like Hardy when he was on the battlefield. Rusty witnessed her brother's death in front of her eyes. Right when his brother died, he thought that in this world there would be no one he could consider home anymore. But the story just now made Hardy angry, because he felt it was unfair to him. The pain was long gone and Rusty was healed too. While he is still tormented until now. Rusty hugged and comforted Hardy. At that moment, suddenly all the Masonic home orphans came. They sent Hardy back to the orphanage together. The orphanage that will always be Hardy's home. The next day, since news of the disqualification of the Masonic home team spread, many people protested and demanded the Football League overturn the decision. Due to the increasing public demand, to the shock of one country, an inter-school league session was held. The league chairman informed him that according to the birth certificate, Hardy's age was against the rules. But Hardy checked and he explained that the birth certificate belonged to his late brother who had died a long time ago. So the names of all the boys in the Hardy family are the same. The father's name is Hardy Brown, his brother's name is Hardy Brown 2, while his name is Hardy Brown 3. But even though it was explained, the league chairman still wanted to disqualify the Masonic team. It turned out that just like Frank, the chairman of the league also received bribes from Luther. When the decision was about to be passed, the secretary suddenly told him that the president had called because this news had shocked the public. The president decided to step in. On the phone, without further ado, the president, knowing there must be a dirty game inside, threatens that if the chairman doesn't allow the Masonic home team to continue with the league, then he will fire him right away. Hearing a threatening voice from the #1 man in America, the The league chairman was very frightened and immediately announced that the Masonic home team would not be disqualified.
Has been overturned.
The next day, when the Masonic home team was about to leave for the final match to be held outside the city, everyone was surprised because the police were also there. At first, Hardy was afraid that he would be arrested for beating Frank at that time. But apparently, the police actually encouraged him to win and bring a trophy for this orphanage. The policeman then continued his journey to Frank's office. When he got there, the police said that he got a report about the exploitation of minors and the torture that Frank had been doing for years. Frank is eventually taken to the police station along with a pile of evidence. But in this final match, the opposing team was very tough in the first round. For the first time, their unique formation could not penetrate the opponent's defense at all. The opposing team's score is superior. And, the entire Masonic home team was beaten to a pulp.
I'm gonna knock his teeth in. Down right there.
You're gonna tell me to block? We're looking. Hey, you haven't done out there so I can hand it to you.
No matter how hard we try.
You ain't so mighty.
What now, coach? I'm a mighty warrior!
Rusty was just silent watching his students despair. Everyone blamed each other and complained to each other in pain. They can no longer continue the game. In the midst of the chaos of the dressing room, Hardy pulled his own broken finger and shouted, "I'm proud to be an orphan." For a moment, the atmosphere became silent. Hardy, who had never wanted to say that sentence, finally said it out loud. He used to not believe that outcast orphans like them could win, but he was wrong. After the long struggle of the Masonic home orphan team, it turns out that they can make it to the final. That's why, now he believed and asked all his comrades to keep believing as well and not give up. Hardy pleaded that no orphans should give up until the end. These wounds were only minor wounds that could not possibly extinguish the spirit of warrior orphans like them. Hearing Hardy's words, the fire of the Masonic home team's fighting spirit rose again.
The day that we are born, we got another half to kick those sandy asses. And come on, 3, march!
Seeing the enthusiasm of his students, Doc felt slapped. Doc, always addicted to alcohol, decides to quit and throws his drink away. Finished setting the strategy, the Masonic children then started the second round match.
Now she's got to shuffle that guy off.
This is having minimal effect against the sandy.
Come on, go! Come on!
Hardy managed to score a touchdown and got 6 points for the Masonic home team. Seeing this fighting spirit, the entire audience was carried away by the atmosphere and cheered for them. Now the provisional score is 7-6, only 1 point difference in the final minutes. The team that can score first will win.
We got one more timeout. Short pass to Hardy. Take it in there, son.
Rusty then asked for a break to change strategy. This time, Masonic will make a trick because the opposing team already knows that Hardy will definitely bring the ball. Then let them focus on chasing Hardy. In fact, he just ran without the ball.
Seeley's gonna run it in himself in front of him.
In fact, the ball was actually carried by another Masonic player. Their plan was a success. The Masonic team managed to cross the opponent's finish line. Now only 7 seconds left to get the ball to the touchdown line. In the final seconds of determination, Rusty told the children to play freely. They are asked to enjoy the game. It doesn't matter if they win or lose, the most important thing is that they play with confidence and have big smiles on their faces. They have to show the community that orphans are children of fighters.
Yeah.
You can do this, Snugs.
Mighty Mites!
All right, Stuart.
Come on, boys. Come on, go! Come on. Go, come on, go!
Hardy failed to score a touchdown. But only 3 inches left. The Masonic home team lost 7-6. However, in the midst of the disappointment of the opposing team's players, commentators and the audience cheered their support for Masonic home. The story of a team of 12 orphans who started out with nothing has now achieved more than they ever dreamed possible. Masonic homes cannot win a title that can be printed on the newsprint, but the story of their struggle will always be engraved in people's hearts.